Already we have seen how we can perform data backups, but just having only a data volume backup is not enough, because after the last save point, all the data we have in these log volumes. So having a backup of these log volumes is also important for us, because whenever you try to perform recovery till the recent time or latest point in time, such cases these log backups are mandatory. So if you read this statement written here, log area is backed up automatically. So what's the meaning of that? Log area backed up automatically means what? It's done automatically by the system itself. System will do it. That's why when we did all those backups earlier using HANA Studio, DBA Cockpit, HANA Cockpit, all these tools, nowhere you find log backup option there, because that's done automatically. And when its system is doing it automatically, what we need to do? There's nothing much we need to perform, but we need to control the log backups. We need to understand what is the mechanism of log backup, and we need to see what kind of parameter settings we can do to control these log backups. So that's what our discussion is going to be today. So understand this concept carefully. Even though your activities are very little, but understanding this concept of log backup is very, very important. So when they are stating that log backups are performed automatically, look at this. If you go to the backup console, here in the configuration tab, you look at this. See the settings on the right hand side. You have log backup settings. So here is clearly mentioned that there is a checkbox here, enable automatic log backup. So that is default checked. Whenever your HANA database is installed, a fresh database, a new installation you take and come to this screen, you'll find your log backup is already enabled. So that's actually a configuration parameter. If you go to administrator editor, configuration tab, here is the parameter, enable underscore auto underscore log underscore backup. So the default value here is yes. In case if you don't want log backups, then you can set this to no, or simply uncheck this checkbox. Okay, suppose assume that we enable and default automatic log backup is enabled. So and when it will take the backup. So here interval is mentioned, backup interval, as the default value we have for this backup interval is 15 minutes. So that's the default value set there. So meaning of that is every 15 minutes log backup is performed. Every 15 minutes. And this is a configurable parameter. You can change this according to your requirements. And this is also a parameter only. You see this parameter, log underscore backup underscore timeout underscore yes. So default we have there is 900 seconds. It's nothing but 15 minutes. That you can change. So anyhow, what this will tell you is every 15 minutes your log backup will be performed automatically by the system itself. Okay, when it performs a log backup, backup will be written to backup files where the backup files are written. So here we have destination. The default destination we have is just like your data backup destination. Similarly, instance directory slash backup slash log. Instance directory slash backup slash log. That's the default path. I mean, you can change it. You know that. That's also a parameter only. Base path underscore log backup. So there your backup files will be written. So these are all default settings only. When we do an installation of a database, a fresh database, if you take, these parameters are already there. But when actually it will start taking the backup, okay, 15 minutes interval is okay, but when the starting point is, where is that starting time? We know that it's not meaningful to have log backups without data backup. So log backups are useful only when there is a data backup. That's why, even though these settings are done, log backup, automatic log backup is enabled. Even though that is the case, system won't perform the log backups or take the log backups until the first complete data backup is done. So once your first full data backup, that complete data backup is completed, there onwards immediately start taking these log backups, provided your automatic log backup is enabled. That's the beginning point. So I'm repeating that. Once a complete data backup or a full data backup is completed, so there onwards your log backups will be done at that interval, whatever the interval you are given, 15 minutes. Now, it's a completely wrong assumption if you assume that, okay, only when this 15 minutes interval is reached, then only the log backup is taken. It's completely wrong because there are some other situations also where your log backups are performed. So if you look at this, you'll understand that. So what is written there? A log segment is backed up in the following situations. So those situations are: first one, log segment full. The second one is log segment is closed after exceeding the configure time threshold. Third one is when database is started. So what is our assumption is the second case, what we have discussed now. That 15 minutes interval case is second one, that is segment closed after exceeding configure time threshold. But anyhow, to understand all these things, first of all, you should understand these terms. What is a log segment? So, what is the meaning of that full? What is the meaning of that closed? So, to understand that, first of all, you need to understand how data is written from the memory into log volumes. At the time of installation, whenever we do installation, we are allocating a separate disk space for your log volumes, usually equal to RAM. Say example, assume that slash HANA slash log slash SID. So for that we assigned say 500 GB. So when system has to write the data into that disk space, it won't write directly. It will create a file first of all, and then into the file only the data will be written. So that file which is created in that log volume, that's what we call it as log backup. Log segment file. It's called log segment file. To write the data into log volume, system will create files called log segment files. In that path, normal files only, data files. And default that segment file is 1 GB. You can see here if you go to the volumes tab, here if you select log, you can see that 1 GB files. Here we have here. I'll explain the other files, but at the same time see the status of this, state of this. Some of them free, some of them backed up, some of them writing. I'll explain you all three of them. Now, once a log segment file is created, it's supposed to write the data into this file whenever the new transaction is performed. It will be like this. Suppose when end user is performing a new transaction, we know that first of all data will be written into the memory. So in the memory we have these fixed size log buffers. Small buffers are there. We call them as log buffers. Each log buffer size is 1 MB. Fixed size log buffers of size 1 MB. So whenever a new transaction is performed, first of all data will be written into this log buffer. And when end user performs a commit, when he commits the transaction, the data must be written into the disk, and then only you'll get a message saying the transaction completed. So then what happens is first data is written into this buffer. Maybe what of 1 MB only 500 KB or 600 KB is full. Doesn't matter. Once transaction is completed, committed, the data will be written into this log segment. Log segment in the log area. See that this is your log segment where your log buffers are written. It will keep on writing into that segment. So that continuously happens when you're doing transactions. This is a continuous process. Now let us consider situations for your log backups. One by one I'll give you, just try to understand. We'll consider a situation like this where automatic log backup is enabled. That's the default setting. And default interval we have 15 minutes, right? So those settings are already done, and now transactions taking place. When the transaction is taking place, first data is written into the log buffer, then log buffer is written into the log segment file of your log volume. Suppose assume that within 5 minutes, heavy transactions they did, maybe some data loading, something they tried. So because of the huge number of transactions, within 5 minutes only your total segment is full. Segment size is 1 GB. That total segment file is full within 5 minutes. But once one segment is full, it will start writing the data into second segment. One more segment file will be created. Start writing the data into second segment. That's not a problem at all. That will continue. But as a segment is full, system doesn't wait until that interval is reached. Actually, the backup interval we are given is 15 minutes, but doesn't wait for that 15 minutes interval. Once segment is full, it will start taking the backup of the segment immediately. Once segment is full, system will start taking the backup. That's what they mentioned here. Log segment is backed up in the following situations, provided automatic log backup is enabled. The first one is log segment full. Segment full, but interval is not reached. And backup is completed. Backup means what? It will take a copy of this backup of this data and write into that backup files in the destination path, whatever you are given. And once a backup of the segment is completed, whatever the data we have in that segment will be cleared. Once backup is successful, the data in the segment will be cleared, deleted. So then it will be having the status, the segment is free. So you can see that that's why here is showing the status of this segment backed up. And once that backup is completed, if you refresh, it will show you the status is free here, and this one is being backed up now, and that also shortly it will be free once that backup is completed. And this one is going on. I'll just wait for a few seconds there. Once backup is completed, they will be free. Free means what? File will be there. That 1 GB file will be intact, but only thing is you don't have the data in that file anymore, which is already backed up. So while this backup is going on of the first segment, system transactions going on there, system is writing the data into second segment. Suppose assume that second segment is full in another 5 minutes time. Then don't think that third file will be created. It won't create third file because the first file is already backed up and it's free. It's reusable. It will start reusing this first segment like that. Okay, so that's the first scenario. Automatic log backup enabled. Within a few minutes, like 5 minutes, your segment is full. One segment is full, backup is done by the system. Once backup is completed, system will automatically clear the data in the segment file, which is free and reusable. Now let us consider second situation. Automatic log backup enabled. Interval we are given 15 minutes. And they are doing transactions. First data is written into log buffers, then log buffers are written to log segment. That's going on. Assume that there are few transactions happening at that point of time. Very few transactions. 15 minutes gone. Within 15 minutes, only 600 MB of the segment is full. Within 15 minutes interval, only 600 MB of the segment is full. So even though segment is not 100% full here, because of the interval is reached, that is 15 minutes interval is reached. So that's why what happens here is immediately system will take a backup. Before doing that, because segment lot more free space is there, another 40% you have. So even then, what system will do, it will stop using that segment. That's what we call it as closing the segment. The segment will be closed and new transactions will be written to the next segment. And once the segment is closed, it will start taking the backup. So here it doesn't matter whether segment is full or not. So meaning of that is, if your automatic log backup is enabled, either of these two situations, whichever occurs first, maybe segment full situation or maybe interval is reached, the time threshold is reached. Whichever occurs first, at the time your segment will be backed up. So that's actually the points they've written. The log segment full situation and log segment is closed after exceeding the configured time thresholds. And another point I also mentioned there is database is started. That's normally happens whenever a database, you shut down and start the database. At that point of time, one segment is being used. That segment will be closed there itself, and the backup will be taken. And system will start using the new segment every time when your database is started. So that's till then, whatever the segment which is being used, that will be closed and backed up. So that's why that point also they've written the database is started. So that's why, even though there what you see is automatic log backup enabled interval 15 minutes, that's not the only situation where backup is performed. Okay, so this is the concept behind that log backups. And then few more important things here. You need to handle those situations also carefully. Like suppose consider a situation where automatic log backup is not enabled. Assume that automatic log backup is not enabled. You uncheck the checkbox. So obviously that's not enabled means no log backup is taken. So in such cases, let us see what happens. System will keep on writing the data from the memory to the log segment, that is buffers will be written here. After some time segment 1 is full, no backup taken. Then start writing the data into second segment full, no backup taken. Third one full, fourth one, fifth one. Like that goes on until your entire file system is full. Suppose 500 GB, until that 500 GB is full. Now when a new transaction is performed, without writing the data into that log volume, your transaction is not completed because writing the data into log volumes is a synchronous process. Only when the data is written into the log volumes, then only the end user will get a message saying that your transaction is completed. That's why once your total log volume, the total space is full, if it tries to write the data into that log segment, there's no more space left over. So then the transaction cannot be completed and database will freeze. Database will hang. It cannot do anything there. That's what we call it as a log full situation. So if you have a log full situation, your database will freeze. So how to handle that situation? So two options there you have. One is you enable automatic log backup. Once you enable automatic log backup, there is no log full situation at all. Suppose they don't want to perform log backups. They don't want to enable automatic log backup. Maybe in the dev test systems. Still, they want to avoid the log full situation. Another option you have is there is a parameter here called log mode. So the default log mode parameter we have is value is normal. Now you need to change this value to overwrite. One single word, overwrite. So what happens if you set this to overwrite? Suppose even though automatic log backup is not enabled, no log backup is performed, system will keep on writing the data. Segment 1 full, then segment 2, 3, 4, like that goes on. Once the entire cycle is completed, no more space left over, no problem. Because your log mode is overwrite, system will start overwriting the data in the first segment. It has written the data into this first segment way back, maybe a few days back or a month back. We don't need that data anymore because already 5 minutes back data itself is already written into your data volumes in the form of data pages. No need to worry about that. Then if segment 1 is full, then it will start overwriting the data. That's what we call it as overwrite mode. So either of these two compulsory you need to do. Either you set the log mode to overwrite without log backups, or the default normal log mode compulsory you need to enable automatic log backup. Otherwise, definitely you'll end up with that database free situation at some point. When it happens, you cannot predict. It may happen maybe after 1 month, or maybe after 6 months, or 1 year. Doesn't matter. All these parameters, everything I given here. So look at this log full situation. In the default log mode normal, if automatic log backup is disabled, the log area grows until the file system is full. At that stage, database will freeze. Okay, so these are the different points what you need to understand about your log backups. Concept is important. Other than that, there's nothing you need to do here. Just only parameter settings, and then your log backups are performed. And you can also see that when you go to your backup console, backup catalog, here you can see show log backups. It will show you all the log backups, which is happening continuously after your first complete data backup is done. And another thing, sometimes these questions may arise, particularly in the certification, they'll ask you, what is the segment size, log segment size? As I told you, it's default 1 GB, the log buffer size 1 MB. But there comes sometimes question, very specific questions like, if you look at these volumes, if you see the log, you see some of the files 1 GB, 1024 MB, 1 GB, and some of the files we have 8 MB, and some of the files 64 MB also we have. Why is it so? So there may be a question on that. Maybe possibility is there. So then to answer that, it's pretty simple actually. If you go to your parameters, you see here the global data NI log segment size is showing 1024 MB, 1 GB. So remember that this is applicable to index server. When we are taken backup, I shown you that clearly. We have backup for index server, we have backup for name server, as well as access engine. So index server is the main process for you where your entire data is stored. So that's the one which occupies more space. Here, the default log segment size for that is 1 GB. So if you want to be very specific, the log segment size for index server is 1 GB. And for name server, it's 64 MB. And for access engine, it's 8 MB. Like that. So that's why don't get confused there in case they're asking so specifically, saying that why we have these sizes there. Okay, so that's a concept of log backups. Very, very important. So is that clear? Any doubts you have on that? Okay, so coming to the next thing, as I mentioned that the earlier versions till SPS 9, we used to rely only on complete data backup, that is full data backup, and log backups for recovery. Totally. No other options there. But when we're relying on these complete data backups and log backups for recovery, usually what happens is the recovery time will be more. Usually the recovery time is more. Why recovery time is more? That you need to understand. So understanding that, take an example, a simple example I'll give you. Try to understand this. Suppose assume that in that company, every 24 hours, a full data backup is taken, and that they are doing at 6 o'clock in the evening, 6 p.m. every day. So they scheduled it and they left it there. Every day, 6 o'clock, your full data backup is done. Then we enable automatic log backup every 15 minutes interval we are given. That's also going on every 15 minutes. Now, for some reasons, your system is crashed maybe at 5:10 in the evening next day. 5:10 in the evening next day. System crashed. Now they want to go for recovery. As I told you, the earlier recovery process is only a full data backup and delta backup. So It'll start recovering the data from full data backup first. So that is done. Then it has to use log backups for recovery. So now imagine how many log backup file system has to use for recovery. Analyze it carefully. Assume that every 15 minutes interval only your log backups are performed. You don't have too many transactions done. Within 15 minutes log segment is not full, so it's going with 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes log backup is taken. So how many file system has to use for recovery? Log backup files. So it's almost how many hours? You have 23 hours. Every hour 4 log backup files you have. So 23 into 4, 92 files you have to use. Remember, we are speaking about those 92 files only for one volume, only for index server. Similarly, there's many number of files we have on name server as well as access engine also. So think about that. When system is doing that recovery using so many files, one by one, obviously it has to verify, read, recover the data. So time taken will be very, very high. The recovery time drastically increases. It's quite a high. That's when some customers have complained about that recovery times. Because usually, well, basic thumb rule is you need to keep the recovery times as low as possible so that we can recover the system and make the system accessible to the users immediately. So to handle those situations, what SAP has done, they came up with this concept called Delta backups. So they've introduced these Delta data backups right from SPS 10. It's only for data backups, remember, Delta data backups, we call them as. Now, Delta backups, there are two types of Delta backups they're supporting. One is incremental, another one is differential. So in the new versions, even though Delta backup option is available, it's not mandatory. It's not compulsory to use Delta backups, but it's highly recommended. So they'll give clearly, SAP will give you clearly instructions saying that it is recommended to use Delta data backups. What's the advantage? Let us take an example of incremental. Understand? As usual, they're going with 24 hours interval for full backup. Say we are going with incremental every 2 hours. Incremental or differential should be referencing the complete data backup always. So the first incremental happening at 8 p.m. So that first incremental at 8 p.m. is having data between 6 and 8. Then 10 p.m. there is another incremental backup because 2 hours interval we are given. And that will have data between 8 and 10. 12 o'clock, 10 to 12. 2 o'clock, 12 to 2, like that. Now suppose if you have these incremental backups, now when we do the recovery, if you are using those incremental backups along with your complete data backup, see how the recovery performs. So it uses one complete data backup taken yesterday evening 6 o'clock. The next day 5:10 p.m. we are saying. So the previous delta backup occurred at 4 o'clock, 4 p.m. So meaning of that is you have around 4 p.m. occurred means how many? We have around 11 incremental backups. So one complete, 11 incremental. and from there log backups. So another 4 log backups will be used. So number of files used in the recovery process will come down, and then quite naturally you'll be able to perform the recovery in relatively short time period. Because of the incremental backups, backup time is also less here. So that also remember. Another one, differential backup you have. Suppose assume that the same way instead of incremental every 2 hours I am going with the differential. And the differential backup will be like this. Every 2 hours means suppose 6 o'clock evening you have complete data backup, then 8 o'clock differential will have data between 6 and 8. 10 o'clock differential will have data between 6 and 10. Understand? It's not 8 and 10, it's 6 and 10. Then next 12 o'clock will have 6 and 12. So as the time goes on, the backup time will increase because the duration is increasing. So obviously backup time will increase. What advantage you'll be having is when we are using the backup for recovery, these backups for recovery. Obviously the number of files used will be less. So the last differential backup was performed somewhere about 2 o'clock. So one complete data backup, one differential backup, and there onwards. Otherwise 2 hours if you take, it will be 4 o'clock. So till 4, at the 4 o'clock, whatever the differential you have, that will be used, and there onwards the log backups will be used. But their backup time is more, recovery time is even less when you compare with using incremental. So you should not rely on one. You always need to go with a mix of this. Your backup should be consisting of all this. You need to prepare a strategy in such a way that your backup times are less, recovery times are less. So if at all, if you want to perform this incremental differential backups, it's pretty easy. First thing you need to make is sure that you have a complete data backup. And then only you'll be able to do these incremental or differential backups. Let us see how it can be done. So look at this. Go to that wizard, launch backup wizard. Whatever it is, say I'm taking incremental. So this will be referring to the previous incremental if it's already available after complete data backup. Otherwise, it will refer to the complete data backup only. So from that time till now, the backup will be performed. Otherwise, already in between you have another incremental, it will refer to that incremental. Everything is same except that prefix is different. Click on next and finish. And this database DP server I enabled it. Don't worry about the DP server. Only 3 services will be default. It's done immediately. It takes very little time. And if you want to take differential, use differential here. Differential always refer to the last complete data backup. Always. That's it. You go to your backup catalog, there you have a checkbox to display delta backups. You can see the delta backups, differential, incremental. So go with the mix of all this. So generally your backup history looks like this. You have full backup, incremental backups, differential backups, and log backups. And what are the recent transactions we have in that log segment of the log area? So when we do recovery, we'll revisit this diagram once again, but just remember that's how it is. I'm repeating this, delta backups are not mandatory, optional, but is highly recommended. So these are the different backup options. So tomorrow I'll explain you how we can schedule these data backups. I've shown you already earlier one example, like you see, if you remember DBA cockpit, there's an option to how to specify occurrences and all. Recurrence. The same thing. I'll show you how to do that. It will take 15 minutes, 15-20 minutes, and then there is also a concept of backup here, which was introduced by SAP in SPS 7. It's called snapshot, storage snapshot. So what is the significance of storage snapshot? How we can take a snapshot of this database? That also we'll see practical. So those two topics we'll discuss tomorrow. If time permits, I'll start recovery process also. Most probably, you may be starting recovery also tomorrow. So we'll see all the options in recovery. I'll show you how to do a DB copy, DB refresh, all those things. Okay, so that will continue tomorrow.